Ooh, we got a guest this time.
Yes.
Hello, Wide-Eye.
Are you here to see Thaden?
I'm in the bookstore, lady. Why the Thaden is not here,
I already
bro.
have cause to speak to him every day.
Wow, you are way too fucking horny for Thaden. And how's it going? Can I fiddle or whatever the fuck your octavo?
So, how'd you like to
Leaf
get together?
through your octavo? No, of course I
See
can't.
you later.
Alright. Oh, I wanted to test. If I sit on the snuggle bench, is she gonna come over? Nope. That would have been such a great feature if they made it so if you sat on the snuggle bench, she would fucking come over and sit right next to you. Why, you want to join me? We get a little Argonian on Argonian action over here. I mean, you may have a hard-on for Thaden, but why not have a hard-on for me?
Greetings.
Greetings! Anyway, today we're doing some more reading. Let's find out what the fuck we want to read. That might be helpful. Oh, let's just randomly scroll down. Ooh, maybe we start a new series today. What if we start a new series, maybe read 2 of the books, right? I feel like reading 2 of the books... Oh, wait, there's 5 of them. If we read... I think we'll read just 2 books in this episode about the mystery of Talara. And then in the next one, we'll read volumes 3, 4, and 5. I don't know that the design of the book changes. Oh, it also changes from the first to the second. I didn't even notice that. That's quite odd. Anyway, I wonder actually, is this like a super small book? No, that's not really. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, these are... fuck it. 2 books is fine. 2 books is fine. The Mystery of Princess Talara, Part 1, by Mera Lakith. The year was 3rd Era 405, which, what was that, like 30 years ago? Something like that? Somewhere around that, I believe. The occasion was the millennial celebration of the founding of the Breton kingdom of Camlorn. Every grand boulevard and narrow alley was strung with gold and purple banners, some plain, some marked with the heraldic symbols of the royal family or the various principalities and dukedoms which were vassals of the king. Musicians played in the plazas, great and small, and on every street corner was a new exotic entertainer. I was going to say entrepreneur. Red Guard snake charmers, Khajiit acrobats, magicians of genuine power, and those whose flamboyant skill was equally impressive, if largely illusion. The sight that drew most of the male citizens of Camlorn was the March of Beauty. 1,000 1,000? Bruh, there ain't even a fucking 1,000 people in Cyrodiil. Maybe there probably are. 1,000 comely young women, brightly and provocatively dressed. Got it, man. Where is that in fucking... Hey, come on. Brightly and provocatively dressed, danced their way down the long, wide main street of the city. From the temple of Sethite to the royal palace, the menfolk jostled one another and craned their necks, picking their favorites. It was no secret that they were all prostitutes. Oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we shouldn't have that then, huh? Yeah, maybe don't send 1,000 fucking prostitutes walking down the fucking road. Yeah, that doesn't sound like the best idea. Okay. See, I thought they were doing it out of fucking choice, just because they wanted to. It's like some sort of, nice tradition. Nah, they're prostitutes. It's getting forced. Okay. And after the march and the flower festival that evening, they would be available for more intimate business. Ginna attracted much of the attention with her tall, curvaceous figure barely covered by strips of silk and curls of flaxen hair specked with flower petals. In her late 20s, she wasn't the youngest of the prostitutes, but she was certainly one of the most desirable. It was clear by her demeanor that she was used to the lascivious glances, though she was far from jaded at the sights of the city in splendor. Compared to the squalid quarter of Daggerfall where she made her home, Camlorn at the heights of celebration seemed so unreal. And yet, what was even stranger was how, at the same time, familiar it all looked, though she had never been there before, or so she thought. The king's daughter, Lady Gilia, rode out of the palace gates and immediately cursed her misfortune. She had completely forgotten about the March of Beauty. The streets were snarled at a standstill. It would take hours to wait for the march to pass, and she had promised her old nurse, Ramke, a visit in our house south of the city. Gilia thought for a moment, picturing in her mind the arrangement of streets in the city, and devised a shortcut to avoid the main street and the march. For a few minutes she felt very clever as she wound her way through tight, curving side streets, but presently she came upon temporary structures, tents, and theaters set up for the celebration, and had to improvise a new path. In no time at all she was lost in the city where she had lived all but 5 years of her life. Peering down an alley, she saw the main avenue crowded with the March of Beauty. Hoping that it was the tail end and desirous not to be lost again. That word just feels weird to me. Not to be lost again, Lady Gilia guided her horse toward the festival. She did not see the snake charmer at the mouth of the alley, and when his pet hissed and spread its hood, her charge reared up in fear. The woman in the parade gasped and surged back at the sight, but Lady Gilia quickly calmed her stallion down. She looked abashed at the spectacle she had caused. "My apologies, ladies," she said with a mock military salute. "It's all right, madam," said a blonde in silk. "We'll be out of your way in a moment." Gilia stared at the march past her, Looking at that whore had been like looking in a mirror. Okay. Huh. Interesting. The same age and height and hair and eyes and figure almost exactly. The woman looked back at her, and it seemed as if she was thinking the same thing. And so Ginna was. The old witches who sometimes came into Daggerfall had sometimes spoke of doppelgangers, spirits that assumed the guise of their victims and portended certain death. Yet the experience had not frightened her. It seemed only one more strangely familiar aspect of the alien city. Before the march had danced its way into the palace gates, she had all but forgotten the encounter. The prostitutes crushed into the courtyard as the king himself came to the balcony to greet them. Oh, so it is like a formal fucking thing that they do, huh? Huh. I mean, not that they're choosing to be there, probably at least. At his side was his chief bodyguard, a battle mage by the look of him. As for the king himself, he was a handsome man of middle age, rather unremarkable, but Ginna was awed at the sight of him. A dream, perhaps. Yes, that was it. She could see him as she had dreamt of him, high above her as he was now, bending now to kiss her. Not a one of lust, as she had experienced before, but one of small fondness, a dutiful kiss. "Dear ladies, you have filled the streets of the great capital of Camlorn with your beauty," cried the king, forcing a silence on the giggling, murmuring assembly. He smiled proudly. His eyes met Gina, and he stopped, shaken. For an eternity, they stayed locked together before His Highness recovered and continued his speech. Afterwards, while the women were all en route back to their tents to change into their costumes for the evening, one of the older prostitutes approached Ginna. "Did you see how the king looked at you? If you're smart, you'll be the new royal mistress before the celebration ends." "I've seen looks of hunger before, and that wasn't one of them," laughed Ginna. "I'd wager he thought I was someone else, like that lady who tried to run us over with her horse. She's probably his kin, and he thought she had dressed up like a courtesan and joined the March of Beauty. Can you imagine the scandal?" When they arrived at the tents, they were greeted by a stocky, well-dressed young man with a bald pate and a commanding presence of authority. He introduced himself as Lord Strail, ambassador to the Emperor himself and their chief patron. It was Strail who had hired them, on the Emperor's behalf, as a gift to the king in the kingdom of Camlorn. "The March of Beauty is but a precursor to the flower festival tonight," he said. Unlike the king, he did not have to yell to be heard. His voice was loud and precise in its natural modulations. "I expect each of you to perform well and justify the significant expense I've suffered bringing you all the way up here. Now hurry, you must be dressed and in position on fill Stair Rock before the sun goes down. The ambassador needn't have worried. The women were all professionals, experts at getting dressed and undressed with none of the time-consuming measures less promiscuous females required. His manservant, Norbuth, offered his assistance, but found he had little to do. Norbuth? Yeah, probably. He's trying to play his game. I don't know if it's going to work out for him, but he's trying to play his game. Helping fucking undress thousands of fucking prostitutes. What a fucking guy. Their costumes were simplicity itself. Soft, narrow sheets with a hole for their heads. Not even a belt was required, so the gowns were open at the sides, exposing the frame of their skin. So it was long before the sun had set that the prostitutes turned dancers were at Cavalstair Rock. It was a great, wide promontory facing the sea, and for the occasion of the Festival of Flowers, a large circle of unlit torches and covered baskets had been arranged. As early as they were, a crowd of spectators had already arrived. The women gathered in the center of the circle and waited until it was time. Gina watched the crowd as it grew, and was not surprised when she saw the lady from the march approaching, hand in hand with a very old, very short, white-haired woman. The old woman was distracted, pointing out islands out to sea. The blonde lady seemed nervous, unsure of what to say. Gina was used to dealing with uneasy clients and spoke first. "Good to see you again, madam. I am Gina of Daggerfall. I'm glad you bear me no ill will because of the horrors. Oh, come on, lady, come on." The lady laughed, somewhat relieved. Yeah, I mean, watch what you say, though. "I am Lady Gilia Reyes, daughter of the king. I always thought that daughters of kings were called princess," smiled Gina. "In Camlorn, only when they are heirs to the throne. I have a younger brother from mine father's new wife, whom he favors," Gilia replied. She felt her head swim. It was madness speaking to a common prostitute, talking of family politics so intimately. "Relative to that subject, I must ask you something very peculiar. Have you ever heard of the Princess Talara?" Gina thought a moment. The name sounds somewhat familiar. Why would I have? "I don't know. It was a name I just thought you might recognize," sighed Lady Gilia. "Have you been to Camlorn before?" "If I did, it was when I was very young," said Gina, and suddenly she felt it was her turn to be trusting. Something about the Lady Gilia's friendly and forthcoming manner touched her. "To be honest, I don't remember anything at all of my childhood before I was 9 or 10. Perhaps I was here with my parents, whoever they were, when I was a little girl. I tell you, I think perhaps I was. I don't recall ever being here before, but everything I've seen, the city, you, the king himself, all seem like I've been here before, long ago." Lady Gilia gasped and took a step back. She gripped the old woman, who had been looking out at sea and murmuring, by the hand. The elderly creature looked at Gilia, surprised, and then turned to Gina. Her ancient, half-blind eyes sparkled with recognition, and she made a sound like a grunt of surprise. Gina also jumped. If the king had seemed like something out of a half-forgotten dream, this woman was someone she knew, as clear and yet indistinct as a guardian spirit. "I apologize," stammered Lady Gilia. "This is my childhood nursemaid, Ramk." "It's her!" the old woman cried, wide-eyed. She tried to run forward, arms outstretched, but Gilia held her back. Gina felt strangely naked and pulled her robe against her body. "No, you're wrong," Lady Gilia whispered to Ramke, holding the old woman tightly. "The Princess Talara is dead. You know that. I shouldn't have brought you here. I'll take you back home." She turned back to Gina, her eyes welling with tears. "The entire royal family of Camlorn was assassinated over 20 years ago. My father was Duke of Oloini, the king's brother, and so he inherited the crown. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Good night." Yeah, don't just tempt someone with the idea of being a fucking princess or whatever the fuck, and then just walk away like it's fucking nothing, huh? Gina gazed after Lady Julia and the old nurse as they disappeared into the crowd, but she had little time to consider all she had heard. The sun was setting, and it was time for the flower festival. 12 young men emerged from the darkness, wearing only loincloths and masks, and lit the torches. The moment the fire blazed, Gina and all the rest of the dancers rushed to the baskets, pulling out blossoms and vines by the handful. At first, the women danced with one another, sprinkling petals to the wind. The crowd then joined in as the music swelled. It was a mad, beautiful chaos. Gina leaped and swooned like a wild forest nymph. Then, without warning, she felt rough hands grip her from behind and push her. She was falling before she understood it. The moment the realization hit, she was closer to the bottom of the 100-foot-tall cliff than she was to the top. Oh, jeez. She flailed out her arms and grasped at the cliff walls. Her fingers raked against the stone, and her flesh tore, but she found a grip and held it. For a moment, she stayed there, breathing hard. Then she began to scream. The music and the festival were too loud up above. No one could hear her. She could scarcely hear herself. Below her, the surf crashed. Every bone in her body would snap if she fell. She closed her eyes and a vision came. A man was standing below her, a king of great wisdom, great compassion, looking up, smiling. A little girl, golden-haired, mischievous, her best friend and cousin, clung to the rock beside her. The secret to falling is making your body go limp. I love when they just try and make things fucking skill books, just like, bro, is this actually a skill book? It probably is. Oh boy. The secret to falling is making your body go limp. And with luck, you won't get hurt, the girl said. She nodded, remembering who she was. 8 years of darkness lifted. She released her grip and let herself fall like a leaf into the water below. Maybe that. I don't know if that's a skill book or not. 25 gold. Probably isn't, to be honest. But it could be. It could be. I wouldn't be surprised. The Mystery of Princess Talara, Part 2. She felt nothing. Darkness enveloping. It's enveloping. She felt nothing. Darkness enveloping her body and mind. Pain surged through her leg, and with that sensation, a great feeling of cold washed over her. She opened her eyes and saw that she was drowning. Her left leg would not move at all, but using her right one in her arms, she pulled herself up toward the moons above. It was a long way through the swirling currents that wrenched back at her. At last she broke the surface and sucked in the cold night air. She was still close to the rocky shoreline of the capital city of the kingdom of Camlorn, but the water had carried her quite a ways from the points where she fell at Cavilstair Rock. Not fell, she thought, correcting herself. She had been pushed. Further down current, she allowed herself to drift. There, the steep cliff walls sloped to lower until they were close to the water's edge. The silhouette of a large house on the shore loomed ahead, and as she neared it, she could see smoke rising from the chimney and the flicker of firelight within. The pain in her leg was great, but greater still was the chill of the water. The thought of a warm hearth fire was all the motivation she needed to begin swimming again. At the shore's edge, she tried to stand, but found she couldn't. Her tears mixed with the sea water as she began to crawl across the sand and rock. The simple white sheets which had been her costume at the flower festival was tattered and felt like a weight of lead across her back. Beyond the point of exhaustion, she fell forward and began to sob. "Please," she cried, "if you can hear me, please help." A moment later, the door to the house opened, and a woman stepped out. It was Ramke, the old lady she had met at the flower festival. The one who had started and cried, "It's her!" And before she herself knew who she was. Even before she herself knew who she was. By contrast, when the old woman came to her this time, there was no glimmer of recognition in her eyes. "By Sethit, are you hurt?" I'm just gonna call her Ramke. Ramke? Ramke. "By Sethit, are you hurt?" Ramke whispered. "By Sakith, are you hurt?" She whispered and helped her up, acting as her crutch. "I've seen that gown before. Were you one of the dancers at the flower festival tonight?" "I was there with Lady Julia Reyes, the daughter of the king. I know, she introduced us," she groaned. "I called myself Gina of Daggerfall. Of course. I knew you looked familiar somehow." The old woman chuckled and let her and led her hop by hop across the beach and into the front door. My memory isn't as good as it used to be. Let's get you warm and have a look at that leg. Ram K took Jinna's soaking rags and covered her with a blanket as she sat at the fire. As the numbness of the chill water began to leave her, it cruelly abandoned her to the intense agony of her leg. Until then, she had not dared to look at it. When she did, she felt vomit rise at the sight of the deep gash, fish-white, dead flesh plumb and swollen. Thick arterial... it's like artery. Arterial? I feel like that isn't right, but arterial blood bubbled up, splashing on the floor in streams. "Oh dear," said the woman, returning to the fire. "That must rather sting. You're lucky that I still remember a little of the old healing spells." Ram K seated herself on the floor and pressed her hands on either side of the wound. Jinna felt a flare of pain, and then a cool, soft pinching and prickle. When she looked down, Ram K was slowly sliding her wrinkled hands towards one another. At their approach, the lesion began to mend before her eyes, flesh binding and bruises fading. "That is highly impressive." "Sweet Kennereth," Jinna gasped. "You've saved my life. Not only that, you won't have an ugly scar on your pretty leg," Ram K chuckled. I had to use that spell so many times when Lady Julia was little. You know, I was her nursemaid." "I know," Jinna smiled, "but that was a long time ago, and you still remember the spell." "Oh, when you're learning anything, even the School of Restoration, there's always a lot of study and mistakes. But once you're as old as I am, there's no longer any need to remember things. You just know. After all, I've probably cast it 1,000 times before. Little Lady Julia and the little Princess Talara was always getting cut and bruised. Small wonder. The way they was always climbing all over the palace." Jinna sighed. "You must have loved Lady Julia very much." I still do," Ram K beamed, "but now she's all grown and things are different. You know, I didn't notice it before, but you were all wet from the sea. But you look very much like my lady. Did I mention that before when we met at the festival?" "You did," said Jinna. "Or rather, I think you thought I looked like Princess Talara." "Oh, it would be so wonderful if you were the princess returned," the old woman gasped. "You know, when the former royal family was killed, and everyone said the princess was killed, though we never found the body, I think the real victim was Lady Julia." Her little heart just broke, and for a while it looked like her mind did too. "What do you mean?" asked Jinna. "What happened?" "I don't know if I should tell a stranger this, but it's fairly well known in Camlorn, and I really feel like I know you." Ram K struggled with her conscience, and then realized. "Julia saw the assassination, you see. I found her afterwards, hiding in that terrible blood-stained throne room, and she was like a little broken doll. She wouldn't speak, she wouldn't eat. I tried all my healing spells, but it was quite beyond my power. Yeah, because she just witnessed the murder, bruh. She doesn't have a fucking cut. Dumbass. So much more than a scraped knee. Her father, who was the Duke of Loigny, sent her to a sanitarium in the country to get well." "That poor little girl," cried Jinna. "It took her years to be herself again," said Ram K, nodding, "and in truth, she never really returned altogether. You wonder why her father, when he was made king, didn't make her his heir. He thought that she was still not exactly right, and in a way, as much as I would deny it, he's correct to think so. She remembered nothing at all. Do you think," Jinna considered the words carefully, "that she would be better if she knew that her cousin, the Princess Talara, was alive and well?" Ram K considered it. "I think so. Maybe not. Sometimes it's best not to hope." Jinna stood up, finding her leg to be as strong as it looked to be. Her gown had dried, and Ram K gave her a cloak, insisting she protect herself against the cold night air. At the door, Jinna kissed the old woman's cheek and thanked her, not only for the healing spell and for the cloak, but for everything else of kindness she had ever done. The road close to the house went north and south. To the left was the way back to Camlorn, where secrets lay to which she alone held the key. To the south was Daggerfall, her home for more than 20 years. She could return there, back to her profession on the streets, very easily. For a few seconds she considered her options, and then made her choice. She had not been walking for very long when a black carriage drawn by 3 horses bearing the imperial seal, together with 8 mounted horses, passed her. Before it rounded the wooded pass ahead, it stopped suddenly. She recognized one of the soldiers as Norbuth, Lord Strail's manservant. The door opened, and Lord Strail himself, the Emperor's ambassador, the man who had hired her and all the other women to entertain at court, stepped out. "You," he frowned. You're one of the prostitutes, aren't you? You're the one who disappeared during the flower festival. There's over 1,000, bruh, and you know that one fucking... Oh, well, I mean, okay, they are his prostitutes, which, I mean, maybe you shouldn't own 1,000 prostitutes, but I suppose, okay, it makes sense that he is, like, aware, like, that one tried to escape. Okay. Jinnah, am I right? All that is true, she smiled sourly. Except my name, I've discovered, is not Jinnah. I don't care what it is, said Lord Strail. What are you doing on the South Road? I paid for you to stay and make the kingdom merry. If I went back to Camlorn, there are a great many who wouldn't be merry at all. Explain yourself, said Lord Strail. So she did, and he listened. Interesting. Interesting, right? Camlorn is the... Yeah. Interesting. Well, that was books 1 and 2 of The Mystery of Talara. The next time that we continue reading, which won't be in the next video, but in the video after that, we shall read volumes 3 and 4 and 5. But yeah, in between those episodes... How's it going, White Eye? In between those episodes, we're gonna do some more exploring in the Land of Mania. Yeah, but until then, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, would you want to leaf through my octavo?
So, how'd you like to get together later and leaf through my octavo?
Leaf through my octavo.
Bye.
Bye.
Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope without you. Cause I don't wanna see the glow without you. Refuse to even leave my home without you. Or my brain's gonna explode without you. I don't even know how to cope